With regard to this seminar, I'm very excited because these are my peers. Two of these on the panel, the two gentlemen on the panel I've known for a long time before either of us made wine, any of us made wine. Scott Schultz from Jolie-Laide and Orion Stang from Dilecta, longtime friends, and I got to meet Angela Osborne today. So what's cool about this seminar is it represents Northern California with Scott coming down from Sonoma, Orion here locally in Paso, and Angela down in Santa Barbara. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Angela from A Tribute to Grace and let her roll with it.
Thank you. Hello everyone, my name's Angela Osborne and I have a label called A Tribute to Grace. And my label is focused 100% on Grenache. I moved to America in 2006 and I started Grace in 2007. And I'm from New Zealand where we don't have any Grenache. We don't have the heat or the long ripening period to grow it. I think maybe one day that might change, but as yet I'm still here in California. And I currently make 7 single vineyard Grenache from all over the state. In 2013 I did 3, so I got a bit busier last year. But we'll be pouring the 3 vineyards, starting with the Santa Barbara Highlands. So I moved here from London in 2006 and I worked in a little wine shop, and I was very lucky to meet 3 winemakers, and I think they might all be here today. Russell From and McPrice Myers and Dave Corey were all making Grenache from the Santa Barbara Highlands vineyard, and we poured their wines and I fell in love with them very quickly. And Russell was kind enough to let me go in behind his contract, and I bought 2 tons in 2007, and I've just slowly grown from there. So, I'm not sure. Yes. I first tried Grenache in 2002. I was working as a harvest intern at a fairly large winery in Healdsburg called Simi. And Simi had a Kiwi winemaker called Nick Goldschmidt, which was how I got the opportunity. I just finished film school in New Zealand, and I worked at a wine shop through film school where I developed a love of wine, but I'd never really had a Grenache in my life. I'd had blends which included Grenache, but they were from the Barossa and they were big and masculine, and wasn't really a wine that I resonated towards. And then in 2002 I tried my first 100% Grenache, which was from a winery called Unti in the Dry Creek Valley. And that was kind of my light bulb wine and drew me into the journey that I'm currently on. I moved to London then and sold wine for a few years and came back to the States in 2006. 3 weeks after I arrived was the tasting where I met the 3 winemakers, and then I started Grace with 2 tons in 2007. And the label A Tribute to Grace honours my grandmother Grace and my favourite attribute. Grenache to me is the most graceful of all grapes, and it's always held a pretty amazing balance between the yin and the yang, but it is ever so slightly on the feminine, on the yin. My grandmother hadn't had Grenache before I started making it, but she loved it. And there's Grace on the left. And me on the right doing some blending in my kitchen. As far as winemaking goes, I have definitely learned on the job. I've worked, I think my label has had 5 different addresses on the back, depending on the parts of California I was in when I made it. This will be my 6th address this year. And I sort of learned the craft working as an assistant winemaker for winemakers up and down the state. The photos here were in 2013 in Los Alamos, which is the part of Santa Barbara where we live. And basically free run into barrel, post-fermentation, and then me with my baby foot treading. So the winemaking style I do is whole cluster between 50 and 75%. And the winemaking is very simple. I foot treat everything twice a day. It's almost with ferment, so I find that by being in there physically I can feel the fermentation spots and mix them around. This is from an amazing property called Shakebridge Ranch, which is up in the Syrah foothills. Anne Kramer's in the audience, and we will hear her talk tomorrow. But her vineyard, I actually was lucky enough to live on with my husband in 2011. We did a vineyard internship with her, and we arrived a good deal after bloom, but this was taken last year when we went out for a conference that she held, and I got to smell Grenache flowers, which is definitely one of the most beautiful things I've ever smelled. And that is them. That's me foot treading. So the fruit comes in, I just ferment in small fermentation lots. I do a layer of whole cluster, and I foot tread it, and then on top of that. And then depending on the percentage of whole cluster, it's either another layer of whole cluster or a bin of destemmed. Cold soak is sort of how long it takes for native to start. The 2013 Shakebridge took 1 day. The Highlands took about 6. So it sort of depends on the site. So the Santa Barbara Highlands Vineyard, this is truly an amazing site. It's very high altitude, 32 to 3,500 feet elevation. It is in the far eastern corner of Santa Barbara County. To drive there, you can either travel from Ojai up through the mountains, about 45 minutes. You can also travel via Santa Maria up the 166 highway, but it traverses up into this amazing high altitude valley where there's lots of coyotes and tumbleweed and this amazing 700-acre vineyard. So it was unlike anything I'd ever seen the first time I visited. It's owned by Letitia Vineyard, and I'm not sure if Lino's in the audience. No. The vineyard itself has, I think, 19 varieties planted. I buy just Grenache, and from a block called the Mesa, which that's from the Mesa looking out towards the vineyard. That sits at 3,500 feet. 14.5-acre block, planted 2 Grenache and Mourvedre. It's planted on 1103, and it's Grenache Noir clone. So a little bit about the vineyard here. It is spur pruned. He uses cross arms. It's planted 8x5. I've picked a number of different dates from 2007 to now. This was the earliest on record, September 17th. The first year was 2007, and we picked on Halloween. So every year I picked a little bit earlier, somewhat to do with my winemaking style and also nature. Obviously 13 was the drought year, so everything happened a bit earlier. And that's the first wine in front of you. 2/3 whole cluster is what we did this year. Élevage is 17 months. It sits in a combination of new and neutral wood, but the total is only 17%. The new barrels I buy are Syrah, and there's also some 600-litre neutral barrels in here. Yeah, it's been an amazing site to work with. This will be my 8th vintage of working with the Santa Barbara Highlands. So this is always my biggest lot, just over 400 cases I made in 2013, which is a lot more than 07, but it's slowly growing bit by bit. The final numbers, it is all native ferment. I don't add anything or acidify. The pH definitely does get bumped up with the whole cluster fermentation. I love what whole cluster does. I love the spice of it, which is generally what I look for when I'm picking, is how the tannins taste on the stems. And it's racked once under the first new moon of the year I bottle. So this was racked last year, January, and then bottled on my birthday in March. And then it sits in bottle for a further 6 months, and then I release it. Shake Ridge Vineyard. Anne Kramer's vineyard, bought in the early 2000s. This particular block was planted in 2009. So Shake Ridge is about an hour from Lake Tahoe up in the Syrah foothills. And there she is there. Yeah, truly amazing vineyard. When I talk about these three wines, I say very high, very heart, very old. The Shake Ridge is the very heart site. So this particular part of California is where gold was discovered. It has this very amazing, ancient, intelligent soil. And in Anne's vineyard are boulders of this big of rose quartz. We took one with us. I don't know if you know that, Anne, but it's sitting on our table. It's lovely. It's about this big. I've never seen rose quartz like it. And they talk about rose quartz operating as at the same frequency as the heart. Crystal healers love it. It's always used for anything to do with heart. These grapes literally are growing through a prism of rose quartz, and the light's reflecting through this pink lens, if you will. Truly, truly beautiful place. We get normally around 2 tons off Anne's vineyard. The clone is called 362. It's definitely the first to pick every year. This was the 8th of September 2014. We picked at the end of August. So it is warm, but she gets good day and all shifts, so you get to maintain acidity there. This is a 50% whole cluster, planted 5 by 8. We've been buying fruit since first fruit, which was 2011. And just over 100 cases I made of this, but made in the same way. Obviously foot tread, as I said, this is a bit of a distance for us to travel, so although it's picked very early in the morning, by the time we get it back to the winery here, it normally takes about a day for native to start. Yeah, this is the warmest site I work with, so the alcohol is 14.7, I think. Yeah, 14.7. This was all neutral wood. I've actually integrated a little bit of new wood in 14s to see how that works, but the 11 and 12 and 13 neutral. The wines here I'm not releasing until September, so these are all still in theory bottle aging. And then this is the Barban vineyard. This was a very fortuitous opportunity that came up in 13. There was a block in the Santa Barbara Highlands that took forever to ripen in 13, and I wasn't actually sure if I would ever get to pick it. In October it was still 19, which was low, and I was at an event and I know the people that farm this vineyard well, and they said that if I needed extra fruit that they could maybe find 2 or 3 tons for me. So we went along and had a look at the vineyard, and it's planted in 1910, so it's reportedly the oldest Grenache vineyard in California. And it's all head trained, unrooted, planted in a lot of sand, so it's dry farmed, very sort of self-sustaining, very different interpretation of Grenache. I've always found feminine elements with all the fruit I've worked with. This is the opposite. This is what was going to start the grandfather series for me, because it's a very male impression. The vineyard was brought to fame by Randall Graham. He made Clos de Gilroy for many years. So it's on a road that leads to Santa Cruz from Gilroy. The road's called the Hecker Pass. And I haven't been lucky enough to try the wine that he made from this vineyard, but I understand it was all carbonic. Again, we did 50% whole cluster, so there is definitely some carbonic element, but not in the traditional sense. These are the vines. It's currently farmed by George Besson III, who lives on the property. The trunks are about this thick, but the growing zone is maybe an inch. So the vines are still going, but the fruit they produce is very, very small quantities, very, very intense, very dark, very low pH, at least for the sites that I work with. And a little bit about the site. So this was the last that we picked in 13. We picked it under the full moon, October 19th. And made just under 190 cases. We bought 3 tons. The wine was very dark, dark blue and almost electric in acid when it came in from the vineyard. And I've never worked with fruit like that before. It's definitely softened with time in barrel and bottle. This is the first release from this vineyard, so I'm really excited.
Yeah.
And those are the graces. Thank you very much.
Before we move, thank you, Angela. Before we move on to Scott, why don't we do about 3 to 5 minutes of Q&A for Angela? Anyone have a question? Chris?
Did you say 36 months bottle aging prior to release?
No, 6.
36
would be amazing. Nice.
So I have a quick question. I noticed the winemaking is almost identical across the board, other than a little bit of stem inclusion more on the first wine. 3 very different sites. In your words, what terroir within the high, hard, and old do those sites and vine age bring out?
Sure. Sorry, that's my accent. Not hard, heart.
Heart.
Heart, yes. Shake just heart. Different to what they bring out in the grapes.
In the wines.
Wine. So the Highlands, I think, has a pretty amazing rosewood quality that I haven't seen in any of the other Grenache I've worked with, either for myself or for other people. The elevation, there's something quite surreal about the place, and certainly to live in a place like that would be quite an ethereal experience. Delicacy is what I would probably say comes out of the Highlands in terms of characters, which is unusual given that it's not a very delicate place. That elevation certainly to me has meant a very strong aromatic perfume core. So I would say that's probably the most aromatic. The shakerage is very expansive. It leads me to think of Anne. So there's a lot of heart in how she grows her grapes and how much she puts into every single cluster. They are truly her children. And the wine itself, I think, will have a long time cellaring potential. Again, it's a young site, and I've only worked with it for 3 years, not 4. But there's incense quality that I get from it, probably more so than any of the other 3, and that's not from wood. Obviously, it's neutral. The stems are a little bit riper, so it feels, lots of heart again, I think, with that. As far as terroir and the Barban, I'm not sure how much what I get comes from its age versus where it's grown, but I guess that's all part of terroir. Certainly a cooler site, and there's a lot of more sort of herbaceous characters I get. The growing curve is much slower, and I don't think it could go much beyond where I picked it in terms of ripening, but it sort of gets to a point of balance. But more yang, more masculine balance. I think I would get from that. I think California has this amazing abundance of sunshine, obviously much more than where I'm from, and you don't get the choices that you get here. When you pick, you can really leave everything as long as you want, like some winemakers choose to do, or as early as you want, like we kind of have to do in New Zealand. So it's definitely a choice we have, what we want to take.
Any more questions before we move on? Well, great. Scott?
What's going on, everyone? My name's Scott Schultz. I actually work for Pax at Wingap. That's the day job. This is just a small thing on the side. It's about 700 cases total. It feels insane for me to be here speaking to icons and luminaries. There's a lot of great people in this room. So, Anthony, that keg of beer we talked about, that'll be Monday. Where's the... Yeah. So I have 3 wines. The good thing about doing it yourself is you get to do it the way that you want. and you get to make whatever you want. So I'm not specifically a Rhone producer per se, but I do really love Syrah and Grenache. So those two are two of the things that I make. The whole, it probably kills some people to hear it said anglicized, the whole Jolie-Laide thing, Jolie-Laide, is pretty and ugly together. Ryan was asking me about it. It's one of those funny things where I've worked with a lot of French kids over the years. Half of them know exactly what it means, and the other half say it doesn't exist. So it's kind of like whenever I learn a Spanish derogatory saying from one of the Vineyard guys, and I go over to the next one thinking it's going to be really funny, he's like, "No, I don't know what you're talking about." So it essentially means unconventionally attractive. Different but good. It's usually reserved for women who look a little bit different but are all the better for it. And being that I was sort of all that way in life, when I did get into wine eventually, it sort of carried through. It was tried and true. I tend to like more esoteric varietals, maybe a little bit different winemaking. And I end up maybe hopefully making wines that are that way. Sasha sent me this yesterday. So another side note, originally when these guys hit us up for this, they said, "You want to pour some wine at a lunch?" And I was like, "That sounds amazing." Then they said, "Can we change the format up?" And I was like, "Yeah, sure, whatever, man, it's your show." And then about a week ago, Sasha sent me an email and said, "So how's the PowerPoint coming?" I was like, "Oh shit." So I looked back at the email, I looked at Helen's PowerPoint from last year, and we threw this together pretty quick. So I didn't even do this. We were pouring at 7% yesterday in San Francisco. I got into wine. I've always worked in restaurants my whole life. A lot of that in the kitchen. I love being in the kitchen, but in the kitchen you make a deplorable amount of money. So I worked in the front quite a bit, which is where I got into wine. I moved to California via restaurants, so I was working for the Keller Group. They moved me to Napa with Bouchon and French Laundry. Once I got here, I met a lot of wine people in the business, and I switched immediately. So I was working in Napa for a few years for some great guys. And then personally, I really like the wines in Sonoma, so I moved to Sonoma. Light bulb wine and mind-blowing wines. I don't want to be a pain in the ass, but I think this happens literally all the time. So I'm not going to name one. I mean, just last night we were drinking tons of killer champagne, Tissot Chardonnays. Like, the world of wine is always amazing. I have 3 wines. So this, of the Rhone wines that I do, 2 of these are going to be in bottle. One is a barrel sample, so they're young wines. I do spin these out pretty fast, and that's twofold. One, I truly do like to bottle them early, so they're bottled in 10 months. I like to grab all the fruit and the aromatics, kind of lock it down in bottle, and then let it unwind that way. But at the same time, I need those barrels back by the time the next harvest comes around. I don't have a lot of space, so we spin it out pretty quick. This is 100% Grenache. So I'm the new guy here, far and away, across the board, the new guy as far as experience. But all of these are very young wines, and 2 of these are very young. So the first one is 100% Grenache, coming from the Provisor Vineyard, which is just outside of Healdsburg. Planted in '99 to Syrah, but it's a warm site, so Syrah wasn't going so well. So they just budded over to Grenache. This is the very first fruit off the vineyard. It was 2013. Angela's actually using it as well now. It's a very cool site, and I mean that in the cool as I think it's a cool site. It's just outside of Healdsburg, like I said. Beautiful, small bowl. It's only 3 acres. Everyone knows the information. It's topless clone, super gravelly loam. It is all organic. Not to call it laissez-faire or lazy, but I don't do anything. Another reason why it's silly that I'm up here, because all 3 of these are foot stumps. They're whole cluster. They're not destemmed at all. They get picked clean. There's a couple of leaves. I'm not worried about it. So we just step on everything, dump it in bins. Everything is just in 48s and macro bins. Pushed out in the sun to get warm. Cold soaks for a couple of days until it gets warm, then we put it outside. Things take about 12 days to ferment. And gets pressed to barrel. It's a small basket press, and sits in barrel for 10 months, and then bottled early. I'm sure everyone's tasted these already, so I'm not going to wait for people to taste, if that's okay. Rossi Ranch is in Sonoma, between town of Sonoma and it's in Kentwood, between Sonoma and Santa Rosa, off the 12. People know the area. It's a beautiful, beautiful site. It's farmed by Phil Couturi, who's here. So any super scientific questions would be diverted to him. Map for you. Thank you, Sasha. So a couple of different pictures from the vineyard. Really red, volcanic soils, pretty site. What's interesting about this one, the first year I was out there, so within the Syrah, they're both album clone Syrah and Grenache. There's Vineyard and there's Muscat. When I first asked why they were there, the kid who used to farm it was like, oh, it's album clone, it does that. And I was like, what do you mean it does that? They're like, it does it, just don't worry about it. I was like, okay, cool, kill it, pick it in. And they're like, pick it in? That doesn't sound like such a good idea. And all the guys on the tractor think I'm silly. So they do. The first year, it showed up with bin of Grenache, bin of Syrah, and then this little shorty bin of white grapes because they didn't feel comfortable picking it in. They didn't even charge me for the fruit. Since then, they've got a lot smarter. They now pick it in and charge me for the fruit. It's just a little bit out there, and that's not the actual ratio that it's picked in. That's just kind of showing you. So it's Grenache on the sort of bottom left with the Muscat d'Alexandria, just crazy hyper-aromatic, of course, and then the Vineyard and the Syrah on the top. And then that is a row of Syrah with just one plant, one cordon of white grapes, or what had been cordon is now cane, actually. The fruit is actually, this is going through a major replanting. It's not doing so well. It was planted in 2006. There should be some information on it here somewhere. Sorry, Sasha, did I get too crazy on it? But same style. There's nothing different in the actual fermentation. So it's brought in, it's picked together, it grows together, it goes together. We just step on it, leave it all whole cluster, don't take anything away, dump it into bins. Because things are whole cluster, I'm very gentle on them. I don't like to extract a lot. I don't necessarily need it to get very hot. It just warms up in the sun. When it gets too warm, we just bring it back inside. I don't even own a pump, so I punch down. You know, it's 1 or 2 in the beginning. When things are ripping, it's 3. It gets a midday. By the time they slow down, as soon as it's getting close to dry, it's barely getting touched. I don't want to extract a lot out of stems. I do like all that California fruit that we get. I love all the, you know, herby qualities that we get out of stems. I love the structure that it brings, but it's all in just neutral barrels. And lastly, it's a barrel sample, so this is very young. This is Halcone. It's a vineyard that Wells Guthrie was a part of planting way up in Yorkville Highlands. So this is 2,500 foot elevation, looking down at Anderson Valley and looking out at the coast. So amazing site, super beautiful. It's cold. The diurnal shifts is a lot less because it's so high, so it's above the fog line. But pure, super thin, stony soils. I also had to rely on growers to give me pictures because I don't take pictures often when I'm out there, embarrassingly, especially during harvest. We work at Wind Gap. We're trying to make 10,000 cases this year, and for me to be kicking these out on the side, I don't take so many pictures. But it is literally an epic sight. It's stunning, and you don't even grasp it until you're out there. That's a great aerial view to kind of give you some idea of it. So it's a mix of clones, as it says, Shab, Estrella River for the most part. Just crazy rocky, super high, very densely planted, so hopefully vines digging deep is the idea. 10 months, neutral barrel, all whole cluster. Hopefully you enjoyed those.
Okay, so we'll do a quick Q&A with Scott.
Keep it up.
If you have any questions for Scott, anyone? Ryan?
Picking parameters.
Picking parameters was the question.
Picking parameters? So, of course, ideally picking by taste always. I do look at numbers. In fact, I should have mentioned the reason I don't have final numbers on any of these is because I literally don't have final numbers. I do juice panels when it comes in, just so I know where I'm at. I know what yams are and things like that. After that, the pH is in a good range and the alcohol is in a good range. I'm not really worried about it. If something goes squirrely, then I would take it to the lab. But for now, it's just me. It's all out of pocket. I don't pay to take things to the lab. The alcohols and things like that, even on the back label, I just sort of extrapolate. Don't tell that to the TTB. In fact, if anyone even looked at the labels for this year, I had a huge, it was embarrassing. I had a huge cut and paste error, so I changed the labels every single year. The big guys, and I'm not going to pick on anyone in particular, they work really hard to make wine the same every single year, independent of the vintage. You can go to the store, or you can go to a restaurant, and you're like, okay, I'll have the Duckhorn or whatever. Doesn't matter if it's 10, 11, or 12, they're all going to taste the same, that's the point. For me, I like to make a very visual and tangible, label that you'll never say, have I had this before? It's always different. You might not know that it's the same wine, which I find often, but this year, because I use crazy fonts, what I actually submitted to the TTB and the font that went on the label is different. And I cut and pasted the wrong alcohol onto the red. The alcohol is 13.8, but it says 12.4, which is the whites. C'est la vie. There is 2 whites that I brought to lunch, not Rhone varietals, Trousseau Gris, Pinot Gris, things like that. So those are interesting and they'll be around. But as far as actual picking parameters, it's always taste, of course. When you're this small, you're piggybacking usually off other people's picks as far as organizing crews. So you get with the people who you most associate. At Halcone, I share it with another guy, Lauren Grossman from Wild Farm. We wanted it the same, so it was picked to like 22.5. Other vineyards like Rossi Ranch, Phil thinks I picked too early, but I'm the first one to pick out there. So it's kind of piggybacking picks on other people. So you kind of have to deal with real world things as well. Any other questions?
All right,
Thank
let's
you.
move on to Orion.
A little closer.
Closer? Yeah, not all that.
I'm Orion Stang from, I have a label called Dilecta that I started back in 2011. I just wanted to say thank you for all the winemakers here in the room that I pretty much get inspired from you guys. So without you guys, I probably would not be here. And thanks for Eric Jensen from Booker Vineyard for giving me a shot out in the vineyard and for kicking my ass up and down. So
Orion will be tagging in after Eric to fight Chris.
Yeah.
Once Eric's down.
So all the knowledge and everything I learned pretty much at Booker, just starting out, I started out in the tasting room. I don't have a college degree in winemaking whatsoever, or any college degree in that fact. I started out in culinary and got super inspired by just flavors and the world of cuisine, and that's what kind of, I'm bad at flipping through this. Culinary school, Italy. Light bulb wine, Sassicaia. Kind of one of my first wines I tried in Italy that was kind of mind blower. And then mind blowing the Domain in 2005. So that's all the wines I've tried since then have been mind blowing. So I mean I can't really single any wines out. And slideshow. My mom does all my art for my labels and stuff, so I kind of like the abstract, whimsical style. And that's with me with a bunch of dirt in my back, out at law. My day job is out at law, where I help make the wines. Me on the forklift after a very scary day. I pour my wines at Paso Underground, which I'm very fortunate to have a spot in Paso Underground. I believe I took Guillaume's spot from Clos Salin, very talented winemaker. So very humble to be in the spot and have that exposure. Yeah, so the wines. I source pretty much all my pretty much sourcing that I started off with. 2011 was my first vintage. Pretty much made 3 tons of fruit, 150 cases, and just kind of worked with my contacts that I obviously had made at Booker, which was incredible. So Kaliza Vineyard, obviously being right next door to Booker. I got a ton of fruit from Carl. And pretty much, you know, the vineyard, everything's kind of south-facing, calcareous shell limestone, sustainable, pretty much all organic. A little shot of some springtime fever. Russell family vineyards, Willow Creek AVA, kind of the same soil profile, planted in 1996. This 2012 was actually the last time I sourced fruit from Russell family due to the lack of water out there. I know he's having problems and issues, so I had to drop that vineyard, unfortunately. That's kind of a shot from the Grenache side that I sourced some of my fruit from. So moving on into the wines, 2012, I was actually making my wines at Herman Story, and I was super pumped to be there. And I kind of work off like inspiration from other winemakers, like I said. And Russell, obviously, getting fruit from a little bit of everywhere along the Central Coast was really. I just tasting all his barrels and things, and just kind of really pushed me in a direction that's kind of pretty much set the path for my winemaking style for the rest of my, I don't know, I can't say career, but for right now. So I wanted to really kind of branch out and be experimental in 12. So I did a lot of co-fermentation and working with different co-ferments. So the first wine is the Tiller, all co-fermented. 65 Grenache, 35 Syrah, 70% New French Oak or so. 5-day cold soaks, about 2 punch downs a day. I'm pretty minimalist when I'm making the wines. Obviously, the vineyard does all the work throughout the year, and I pretty much just let the fruit come in and speak for itself. I don't do any racking or filtering or anything like that. So. Native fermentations and the second wine. Am I going too fast? Is this everybody try that? The second wine, 2012 Unorthodox. 42 more vet from Russell family, 42 Syrah Kaliza, 16 Grenache, Russell family as well. Pretty much. A lot of whole cluster in this wine. I kind of wanted to show the purity of the fruit and not kind of take away from any of the fruit coming basically from the more bed. And so I left out, I kind of wanted the contrast to be, a lot of oak up front on the Tiller, and Unorthodox to kind of be more of the neutral wine and just kind of, and I've never done a neutral wine, so I've always wanted to kind of see how the profile would show. And the secret kind of ingredient in this wine, I did 8% Viognier, co-fermented in my 100% more bed lot that's in this wine. So there's a kind of a little bit of a floral perfuminess on the more bed, if you guys get that. And then lastly, Shadow Canyon. So 2013, I kind of went crazy, and a bunch of vineyards that I saw, I don't know, not like saw, but was pretty much just kind of talking to people and in the works of contacting new people to inquire about getting some new vineyards. I pretty much started grabbing, I jumped off Dilecta, which was amazing. Thank you guys. And I was going to show one of those ones, but I figured we had enough Dilecta this morning, right? So, so I decided to do Shadow Canyon instead. Shadow Canyon was just this really cool York Mountain, obviously AVA, kind of where Epic has their winery. More tucked back on the very top hillside. Kind of their own little microclimate back there that produces these crazy, just really interesting structured wines, kind of like nothing that I really taste anywhere in the central kind of Paso area. It's more coastal influence. So I was really digging that, so thought I'd give it a shot. And so the last one we're trying is 2013 barrel sample. It's about 70% whole cluster, and it's all neutral oak. So this is a shot of Shadow Canyon. And it's 100% Syrah, obviously, and they farm it pretty much 3 tons a year or so, give or take. Pretty much the same style, and all my is 5-day cold soak. It pretty much heats up naturally, starts fermenting about 20-day ferments. Not a lot of playing around. I don't do like any pump overs or anything like that. And then this is just all neutral, and that's pretty much it.
That's delicious.
Okay, questions for Orion? You want to tell us about your tattoos? Scott, you can chime in too.
The tattoos are like kind of a timeline of everything I've done throughout my life. They're very spontaneous and they don't mean shit.
I am kind of curious, if I can, now that you make a wine that does have oak and you're moving into... Oh, sorry. I apologize. Just kind of curious, being that the first wine does have 70% new oak,
Yeah.
and then you move into some neutral for both.
For both, yeah.
Are you finding this? Make it rain. Are you liking neutral or are you liking new?
I don't know. I kind of fly by the seat of my pants a little bit when I'm making these wines. It's pretty much whatever's given to me or what I have access to. And I'm still such a new winemaker to the scene where I'm just kind of like just trying new things and kind of going from there. So I don't know. I mean, I think it's pretty much vineyard site specific whether I do neutral or not. But I definitely like the aromatics and the characteristics that I get. I mean, obviously, if I do neutral, I probably want to do more, really like a little whole cluster with neutral. But I mean, not opposed to obviously new oak too, which is kind of pretty much all of us for all of things.
That's heavy rain. Is lunch indoors?
Lunch is outside. We're walking.